Well, Mr. Zellerbrax, we find ourselves at episode 12. What do you think about that? We're grooving along.
Well, I find it fantastic. And I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Rock Runners Report. This
Yeah.
one's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, we're hoping. I think, Zel and I kind of had a good chuckle, I think, after last week's episode, because last week's episode was supposed to be this week's episode. But we just kind of got a sea of information, kind of prior to, and decided to audible a bit, and then the audible turned into the whole playbook.
Yeah, kind of feel like last week's episode was driving a car off a cliff and riding the thing all the way down.
It's so true. I think, and it's funny because, we like to talk about the news, and we like to talk about the news in an actionable amount of time. But I think, and Zel and I are kind of working our, the kinks out and all this stuff, and enjoying the journey as we go. There are these moments when you kind of, you work really hard and you're very happy with what you've done, but then there are these moments when you work really hard and then you think to yourself, I could learn something from that. And I think last week's episode was one of those.
Yeah, it definitely was a little dry, but it was good. It was a great conversation, and if those of you that made it through the whole episode, you guys are troopers.
Yes, you guys are absolutely troopers. That is
So,
true.
and let me applaud each and every one of you, because we love you guys.
We do.
With that being said, don't forget, guys, to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and if you like what you hear, man, give us a little feedback. Tell us what you like, and if if it could be a little bit better, like last week's episode, let us know. So let's get into what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so here's what we're going to talk about tonight. Zel and I have kind of allowed ourselves, blank canvas, if you will, to just think about all of the different possibilities of what maybe an ideal system that we'd like to maybe set up our own selves in. If kind of all the rules were just kind of, there were no rules really. I mean, we just kind of could absolutely blank canvas it in, and not always necessarily even taking into consideration, the specific star map for Star Citizen. Just kind of of theory crafting a little bit, just beyond that, even, or not really beyond it, but just not necessarily letting that constrain us either. So I'm really excited about tonight's episode. I've done a lot of thinking about it, I'm looking forward to diving in here.
Well, the concept was behind, what's your dream planet? What would your dream planet look like?
Yes.
And that's kind of the concept that we had kind of taken. And, for me, that's one of those things that I really love to think about. If you were going to settle a system, what would that system look like? For you, on your particular system, how many planets do you have in your system? And what does your star, or what, are you a single star? Are you binary stars?
Yeah.
So, what's your, how many planets in your system?
Yeah, and I mean, are there asteroid clusters there? And I mean, and then even speaking down to some of the other things, like the resources and flora and fauna, and and a variety of other things potentially. What kind of biomes? The atmosphere types. Whether or not you're, whether or not there's, it's kind of a very remote world, or is it kind of a, in either one of the big hubs? Is it in Is it in like the Soul Nexus or the Terra Nexus type of thing? Where's it? Those types of things are all kind of free game tonight because really we're not really constrained. We're just going to have some fun with it. And
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Because wow, yeah, it's. I'm sure a lot of people have thought about it. Especially when they are thinking of their perfect world. Where would you want to settle down? Where would you want to, after being the intrepid explorer, where would you like to retire? Well, let me ask you, where would you put your star system?
It's a great question, and so I had been thinking, it would be really really cool to say stage something in kind of a major in a major shipping lane, somewhere between in between the Soul Nexus and the Terra Nexus, kind of like maybe like an Ellis style system or something like that, where there's a lot of kind of core worlds in an area, that type of thing. But after really kind of giving it some thought, I really think that I would enjoy more of a frontier type world. Something that's a little further out, away from all the hustle and bustle, where you have to have some self-reliance, to kind of scratch out an existence. So, now I'm not saying super remote, but I am saying something that's a little more frontier,
A little off the beaten path.
little off the beaten path, exactly. So that's probably where I'm at, to begin with. So how about you, as far as, like as we begin to kind of hone in on this stuff, are you more kind of right in the swing of it, or
Oh,
way out there?
no, absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah, I too. I'm out on the edges, man. I'm on the frontier. Being the intrepid explorers as we are, yeah, I probably would have searched high and low for this particular system. Definitely set it up to where it's a few jumps from the outer edges, but not so far out that it would take you forever to kind of get back into the interior. But somewhere, I guess my Goldilocks zone would be maybe 3 or 4 jumps from the outer edge of known space right now.
I like it. I mean,
So, yeah,
and
somewhere kind of remote, but not so far out.
yeah, no, I think that's a really good, kind of distance where, it's a few jumps to kind of, if you happen to be doing some resource collection or, whatever you happen to be manufacturing or, that type of thing, where it's not necessarily too far to kind of get it into a trade lane, but it is off the beaten path where people would have to kind of specifically head in your direction if they wanted to come out that way. They wouldn't just stumble across you. I like that.
Would you also look for a system with multiple jump points?
That would be ideal, right? If you had a couple of different options, and like especially if one of those jump points maybe kind of took you into Xi'an territory or maybe Banu territory, that type of thing. If you could jump back towards human settlements, but then maybe find your way towards Xi'an space as well, or Banu space as well. I think now I would definitely probably. Myself would probably try and set up as far from the Vandul as possible. I'm certainly, being more of an industrial based person, I'm not looking for as much military conflict as, so, something that's kind of far from the front would be something that would pique my interest.
Oh, absolutely. You know what's funny? You're talking about the Xi'an and say like the Banu, but just a funny aside. I don't, lately I have been watching, past couple nights. It's been, quite a long time. But I started watching, Star Trek, The Next Gen again.
Oh, I've watched a few episodes of that too in the last couple of weeks. It's funny you mentioned that.
And, man, can I tell you what a great show that is? I mean, it's just like, yeah, it some of those episodes are actually rather moving, and you think to yourself, man, what great writers that the show had, especially when you get in that season 3 and beyond. It really starts picking up, and some really great episodes. But I had this thought the other day. One of the things about the Banu, and I don't know if they were, yes, they're a trade type of people, and from what we understand, they do trade with the Vanduul, which to think about it is kind of wild. It put, watching the show, it was a show that had the Ferengi in it. And it put me in the mind, I go, it's like the Banu are like the Ferengi.
They are.
Maybe not that personality type where they're more conniving and scheming, but maybe they are. The reason I brought up the whole idea with the Banu, trading with the Vanduul is that they'll trade with anybody. Anything to make a buck.
Yeah. So, no, I get it.
So is some of the idea. I was wondering if when some of the creatives over at CIG, when they were coming up with the Banu being a trade style species, if any of them had the idea of putting a little bit of the Ferengi in there as well. So I just thought that was actually kind of wild. And the reason, I brought up that is, what kind of scruples, I wonder, do the Banu have? So would I want to back my system up close to Banu space or, Xi'an space? How many, how far out would I want to be? I'd say in a sense, I'd rather be closer to those guys than, seeing the encroachment of the Vanduul. So, yeah, that's kind of a, if you start thinking about it, man, you have to kind of start being pragmatic about it. Where you set up, it's like, also, is there a way, if you have multiple jump points, do you have one that, if something ever happened, that you could hit that jump point and, get out of Dodge if you had to? Grab your go bag and get in your ship and haul butt, if something, broke loose in your system.
Well, you need a back door. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would think, and you do raise an interesting point. I mean, if you're 3 or 4 systems, say away from, you're kind of in a remote frontier, of course, then there's, everything being on a scale, you're probably there's not going to be a whole lot of just, like Terra or Sol security, in that type, depending on, the presence of other people there. So, you'd certainly may find yourself in a spot where, there's a balance, right? You don't necessarily want to be completely lawless either.
Well,
You
I
know, it,
mean, that's the thing. Would
yeah.
you want to, say um, you're one of the first persons to, explore that area. Would you register it with the UEE where, the UEE could have a claim to it, or would you leave it unclaimed, or just, kind of be your own little frontier? Um,
That's a great question. I think there's pluses and minuses to all that stuff. Of course, the UEE could come in there and be like, "Well, it's a nice system you have here," and just kind of annex it. You know what I mean? But of course, I suppose you probably face that in any situation. Like at some capacity, the Xi'an or the Banu could come in and feel like they could have a military presence strong enough to say claim it, or it's a that actually is a really good question. I mean, I see myself wanting to do some industrial based things, and so in order to do some industrial based things, that kind of really does require there to be some stability there. You're not going to be necessarily manufacturing in a situation that you may need to be able to hit that you have to hit the back door. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, totally, very interesting. Interesting thoughts as we kind of begin fleshing this out tonight.
well, I know that the UEE does kind of have a land claim office, because that's definitely something they're wanting to do in game. They actually had start they back in 2017 they sold those land claim markers, where you could buy the 4 and 8 kilometers squared. So you could buy the big marker and the little marker, where you could have a 4 kilometer square or an 8 kilometer square. But is there somewhere in the lore, if you're kind of a respected explorer, um, I'd say if you were, just narratively speaking, you've probably been a member of the UEE, served in the military. So, you go on those claims and say, hey, being an explorer, being the first one to find it, name it, and set a claim to, at least one of the planets that, that they would at least acknowledge, if you had claimed, a lot of that and kind of registered it with the UEE, as if they would, honor your claim. Now, depending on how resource rich, I suppose, the other planets in your system were, or the planet that you decided to settle upon, is Shubin gonna come kick in the door and,
Sure.
throw some of their political weight around, because they have a lot of money, and say, we're going to take your beautiful planet here and, mine the crap out of it. Or, if your claim kind of precedes them from doing that, that's, I guess, where I'm at with it, whether I would, you know, bring it to anybody's attention. But, then again, you also got to worry about, depending how far out you are from like Xi'an or Banu space, or how far out you are from UEE space. I guess those are all considerations. But I guess if it's, what's your dream planet like? And I guess we can go that way as well. But if we're, say, in game, are we going to be able to claim certain areas of space the further out you go?
Yeah,
Or if that's how it would work narratively or whatever. I guess that's all. I guess that's how we're speculating all that.
yeah, it's difficult to say. I mean, how all the land ownership and all that claims and how those would be honored, and and I suppose, as being the people that we are and being part of, being star citizens, I think the UEE would probably is going to be the most natural fit, and I think any form of government, probably has its drawbacks, but probably the closest aligned to what to at least humanity or whatever would be them. And I do think that it would be interesting to find kind of some frontier world between like the Banu and like either the Sol Nexus or the the Terra Nexus and the Xi'an. I do think that those someplace out kind of between those two, where like we talked about, where there's lots of opportunities to jump potentially into either one for trade options, is an important thing. And so let me just kind of state that now that we could kind of got a rough idea, the one thing that I want it's very important to me as a miner, that that system that I would settle in would be filled with resources. I mean, and there are certain ones that are really important to me. Number one, would be access to hydrogen. As you can imagine, being able, if there's a gas giant, potentially there, or certainly some way where if you have good fuel scooping technology, that you have access to hydrogen. Just because it's one of the most key travel fuel. It's certain fuels. It's funny. I think major governments today, like for instance on our planet, they stockpile two things really: gold and oil. So fuel's just one of those. It's a strategic thing. So the other thing that system, and I think eventually I'll begin speaking down on the specific planet, but the system would also have to be quantanium rich as well. I think that's an important thing. Being able to, once again, you have your hydrogen fuel, you have your quantanium fuel. Those having access to those two things, of course, then gives you the ability to conduct trade and to have, if there is several planets in your system, you can travel quite freely between the systems and that type of thing. So so as we kind of I think it's funny, we get like the 10,000 or whatever, the galactic, the universal view, like where you'd want to be kind of frontier wise. But then as we kind of get into the system, a couple of things, very rich in resources, and like you said, at least a couple of jump points, potentially one that would go to either lead to, say, between Sol and Banu, or between Terra and Xi'an, and I tend to lean towards the Xi'an myself, and there's a reason for that, and that is because I really am interested in manufacturing things, and I think that some of the Xi'an tech, would lend itself towards that. So, that's where I'm at. Right off the bat, it's very important to have, access to some very important resources, and those two are right at the top of my list.
Well, you're exactly right. With the systems, they'd absolutely have to have resources and be resource rich. That's that also probably come with its own complications as well. But you being an individual, from what I understand from the lore, is that the Xion don't mind doing business with individuals. But I think they don't really dig doing business with the UEE. So I think that's how that goes. And yeah, I would set up trade as an individual between the Xion and the Banu. I probably wouldn't, you know, let them in on where I was, but that I do have a supply of these particular resources that they'd be interested in to kind of to get that rolling. I most definitely would have some sort of mining operation set up on one of my planets or moons where depending on the different types of resources, whether it's exotic or basic like aluminum and copper or quantanium, things that seem like basic compounds throughout the universe, or is it more exotic materials that that's pretty rare around the universe. So I definitely would be looking for more exotic stuff. That's probably what I'd be looking for. If we're kind of if it was up to us and we were building out this star system, what would it look like? How many planets would you have in your system?
It's a good question, and so it's an interesting question between planets and then moons, right? And so I definitely would want to have a healthy asteroid belt in my system for a variety of reasons. I think asteroids offer, of course, an enormous amount of resources when it comes to, just want to speak to this real quick and then, we'll kind of pivot right back to what you're asking. I think that asteroid mining, has a tremendous upside in the fact that it can be conducted in kind of the vacuum of, space where people may not necessarily, frequent that often, I also think that you could, you could actually store or, create kind of some resource caches, some storage facilities on some asteroids, just kind of that type of thing where, where anonymity is part of the security, apparatus there. And of course that's varying degrees of base building in asteroids and that type of thing, but definitely storage facilities, zero-G storage facilities and that type of thing for, like you said, if you have, you might have a go bag, but then you might have a place where you kind of fuel up. An asteroid that's just it's kind of packed with some quantanium fuel and some hydrogen fuel somewhere, where you can kind of just, get one of your bigger ships kind of, spooled up. So, yeah, I definitely would want, a healthy, at least if not a ring around, the sun or suns there. And I really do feel like, I think a couple suns would be great. But I honestly think a single sun system would be just fine. It doesn't have to be, but so either a ring or a cluster of asteroids. But as far as planets go, I would probably think that maybe probably in the neighborhood of 4 would be about what I was looking for. Certainly not, obviously the more diversity, the better. I mean, clearly, and so, you could pack it, but, probably at least 4 planets, so you'd have some, and maybe have them, one maybe a little closer to the sun, where it's it's a little more scorched, and one in more of a green zone. And then a couple that were out a little further, and in different states of maybe kind of iciness, would be good. But one of those planets I would like to have, definitely a gas giant, that has, I think a gas giant offers, it's a tremendous amount of resources. Gas giants, with all the different, potential ways to get in there and scoop gases and that type of thing. So yeah, so as we kind of begin to kind of round this out, so certainly some asteroids, either a cluster or a ring, and I would like that to be a pretty vast field. So, it's not super concentrated, fairly spread out. And then I would probably, like I said, about four planets around a single sun would be, kind of up my alley, that type of thing.
That surprises me a little bit.
Yeah.
I would have figured you would have chosen more than just 4. Seems like you're going for the minimalist approach.
Well, it is they're definitely. I think the more there is there, the more it's going to attract attention. So if you have, if there's just a tremendous amount of resource-rich planets there, or moons, I think that it's only a matter of time before you're going to have a lot of competition.
I see. I see the logic in it, where where people may overlook. And they're like, oh well, it didn't look like that has that much stuff going on there, so I'll just keep on rolling. That does surprise me a little bit, though.
Yeah,
I have to admit, 4 planets, and how many moons?
I'm a couple moons, a planet kind of guy. I think you probably would have, like I said, a fairly robust asteroid field or belt, clusters, or it could be multiple clusters or a big ring, and then probably around the more scorched planet, more of a single moon type thing. The green zone planet, a couple of moons, and then the ones that are a little further out away, would probably be a couple of moons, maybe 3 moons on the furthest one out type of thing. So definitely some diversity there, in that sense, but it doesn't have to be like I said, if it's just kind of 8 or 10 planets and 4 or 5 moons, a planet and that type of thing. Boy, you'd really think that it wouldn't be long before people are like, man, I could build an empire here and just move in a massive amount of stuff and
which is kind of funny, and I guess we'll get to that in a minute. But would you set up like on any of these planets or moons, or even in the asteroid belt, would you set up a mining, or a couple of mining facilities?
Absolutely. You've got to have you have to have your mining facilities. You have to have your processing facilities. Now, it's interesting because I would like to make the transition, and I don't know if Star Citizen's ever going to allow us to do this, right? Resource collection and acquisition is incredibly important to me, but only in the sense that we could use those resources to do something with. Mm-hmm. And I really do hope that we get to that spot, right? Because I do want to... Manufacturing, I think, would be a really fun thing to do. At some level.
That's one of our big, things on our wish list for Star Citizen, isn't it? It's something that you and I both share, pretty deep passion for is setting up manufacturing, being able to set up mining extractors on nodes or veins. They've already mentioned that we're gonna have ore veins And, the prospector was designed to search for just those things. So, they've already built the assets for, mining extractors. You see them every time you go to, to the different outposts. They have those miners going, so at least they have an idea for them, as well as having those, those vegetable groweries that you see, also the little pods that you see outside of those facilities as well. So they do have an idea for it, and the base building is on the progress tracker right now. So at least that part of it is going to be now how all that stuff we go about. Is it one of the things for the Pioneer where we have to go out and collect a bunch of inert material to build walls, different metals, to build components for your base. How what's all the different resources that you're going to have to put inside the Pioneer for it to build your base up?
I mean, that's what you're hitting on is one of the great kind of questions that I think probably swirls around yours in my head. Also, not just when we do the podcast, but all like when I'm walking around in life, or drinking coffee in the morning, or it is one of the great mysteries that I have. That I think about a lot. It's like, so you have this, like you said, the Pioneer sitting there, and you're taking a look, and you're like, okay, I've decided on this base design. And then all of a sudden, does the Pioneer spit out an invoice? Oh, like an invoice? Okay, well, as soon as you load up, 7,213 SCU of aluminum, and so much corundum, and so much, inert, and so much this, and so much that, and you queue all that stuff up. The minute that you do all that stuff, we'll begin kind of 3D printing this stuff. Is it that kind of a deal?
Yeah. That's kind of how they explained it so far. Now, the question is it going to be, you got to build so many walls and a roof, and, or is it going to, which was kind of like in Star Wars Galaxies, they did it in this way where you, had a resource list of all the material that went into a particular hab or house. I called them houses. So you had to have so much material that went in that one particular house. You found a plot, and it just built that style of house. It's kind of like what it looks like with what we've seen so far, especially when they're, when they showed off that, that building tool where, they can set a building, and then it's designed to where you can add on to the building. Like it has, different snap points where these different things will snap to it. Or is it going to be one of those situations where, and I kind of hope it's the latter, where, you build all the walls that you want, and then you build the foundations, and then you build all the walls that you want, and then, you put the roof on, and, you add the power to it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And like speaking of power, I was like, how are you powering this thing up? You know what I mean? Like, is there, are these giant generators you have to build, or are there, are there going to be maybe some solar, or some, maybe if there's a steady wind or something that you can kind of collect? I mean, it's going to be very interesting, I mean,
are they going to give us a few different
great
power sources? Will they give us windmills for planets that happen to have like serious wind ripping through it, like
Right.
Uncle Iapy or something.
Yeah.
Where
I mean,
there's always storms, or is it going to be? We saw that at some of these different outposts where, yeah, they do have the solar panels there. Anytime you land, you see that little area of solar panels over there. So, that definitely is probably something they have in mind, as well as generators. I think they actually brought up the whole idea of the generators as well. Well, I mean, I know they did. So, is it when they start building out that pipeline? And, are they going to build, connection points where it's like, well, I set my generator here. I'm going to run my cable over to it, or I set my solar panels over here, and run my cables over to the energy converter, and that goes into the generator. Get whatever storage it may have for batteries. If it's solar, it's going to have batteries, and then it's going to have a converter, and then it's that converter is going to convert it from DC to AC, or of course is going to be 900 years in the future. So however they have it set up. How complex are they going to go with these ideas? Are they going to have geothermal?
Yeah, there's another option, geothermal, exactly.
Maybe it kind of has an active, an active geothermal environment where, that could be a thing. All those things actually would be pretty awesome to see. But yeah, to me, the more complex the base building, the happier I would be.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree strongly enough with that. The more complex the actual amount of different things you can collect is, and the more complex the list of things that you can create is as a player, to me, and I don't necessarily know that we're headed in that direction, but it does seem like, I mean, to me, end game really would be kind of that thing for me. It's definitely not, it's not just always going to be resource acquisition. I enjoy resource acquisition, and nothing will make me happier than to have, like you were talking about earlier, these autonomous fleets, of ore collection devices, or, some kind of, different kind of, resource acquisition devices, be it if it's, getting, some kind of, carbon-based stuff, or if it's getting some kind of a liquid-based stuff, or some kind of a gas-based stuff, something metallic, that type of thing. All the, being able to have, not just where you actively mine that stuff, but to be able to do some passive stuff with it, with these machines that you've generated. I mean, this was something that I'm really looking forward to. But once you get around the corner and you're able to kind of, you have this influx of these particular things, then being able to do something with them, I think, is going to be an important thing. I hope it does get beyond just kind of feeding, the existing, the Vanu, the Terra, the Xi'an, feeding their forges with that stuff. I hope it does get beyond that.
Well, yeah, that really is in-game play style for us, where we could set up our own factories. The science gameplay where you collect all these different resources and you put them together to make these different liquid compounds. Setting up factories. What if I wanted to make ship shields or quantum drives? Set up a resource collecting and set up my little factory where I can make quantum drives, and get my supply chain. I need so much copper, I need so much aluminum, I need so much, crystal or whatever, whatever they design, I know they've already talked about building these virtual factories for quanta. So, and each of these factories are going to have its own resource list of what it makes. So
Right.
Each factory will probably make a component and send, and create these supply chains where each of these components get sent to another factory that actually, makes the end component, like the quantum drive. So, this factory makes the, uh, the
Some
I
sub
have to
the,
figure
the
out what goes into the
subcomponents,
quantum
right?
drive.
Yeah, all the
And
subcomponents, right? That's
yeah,
awesome.
so however many subcomponents go into that quantum drive, 6, 7 components. So they're setting up all those different supply chains for quanta. So what if you could do that as well? That's your end game, where setting up all these factories, and hey, possibly you can also set up contracts with the quanta, where the quanta brings you some of those components, and it keeps your factory rolling, or gets your factory rolling. So
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, maybe like there's, for whatever you're manufacturing, there's 11 subcomponents, and you've got yourself basically maybe 9 of them. Where in that particular, and that would be kind of one of the cool balancing acts that they could do, where where there would be such a vast requirement of different things in order to manufacture specific things, that not every system's going to have an abundance of every single thing you need, to the point where some systems you're going to have to make a decision on. It's like, man, I can actually build resource acquisition streamlines or pipelines around 6 or 7 of these things, but I'm gonna have to trade for these other things in order to manufacture these things, or I'm gonna have some other way of of producing this other stuff. And I mean, that's where then you'd have a situation where maybe people team up. It's like, okay, hey, other guy who's 13 systems away, and has those subcomponents that I need, and I'm producing the subcomponents, and generating the resources for the subcomponents that you need, that type of thing. That's where trade becomes such an important aspect of it all, right? So
that's where player to player trade, that's where that interaction comes from. And also where cargo hauling comes into play as well.
Oh,
because,
couldn't agree more.
you have to go over to Bob and pick up, Bob's components, and then ship them over to John for what he's building. And, you've got all this back and forth going on where you have the interaction between the player base, So it's having these little supply chains between all these different players, as well as the interaction with quanta. Say some of the raw materials, or some of the materials that may be cheaper if you just buy them from the AI. To get your stuff rolling. And so you could have all these different interactions with all these different players that are trying to run these different industries. So that could actually get pretty awesome and complex at the same time. But it would be that complex gameplay that I'd say a lot of us in the player base would absolutely love. The interaction between other players. So your couple of factories build this, and that guy's over there builds that, and then you have the interaction between everybody, where you can set up these different trade routes between all these different player characters wherever their little bases are set up, and then pay people to do the cargo hauling for you. I think it'd be actually pretty amazing. It's something that absolutely should be put in the game.
Yeah, well, I can't agree more. I mean, to me, that's going to be, and I understand this stuff is going to come kind of post Squadron 42 and that type of thing. But eventually, as you're building out these systems and you're building out all this resource acquisition, but when you start putting it, I mean, that really is going to have to be part of the end game. I mean, I can't imagine it not ever getting fleshed out that way, So, I don't really want to imagine it without them fleshing it. I don't.
No, absolutely. They're building this game with such fidelity,
Right.
that it's a logical step. When everything, say we're like a year into Squadron 42 being done and the PU being, officially released and launched, it frees up these guys to start thinking of all these amazing different things that you can start adding to the universe. I just don't see, I just don't see a plan where they don't start thinking about things like that, where on the industrial side of gameplay, that type of interaction is exactly what they've talked about. What they really want out of Star Citizen is that the player base builds the universe out. They're going to give them the tools, and it's up to the players to flesh the world out, so to speak. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Well, and I also honestly believe, and I truly believe this: if Quanta, if it takes certain amounts of resources to build, M2s or C2 Hercules at Crusader on, in the Stanton system, and if they just don't have enough aluminum, you're not buying one of those things.
Yeah,
they just can't manufacture them. You know what I mean? End of story. They're just short on aluminum, and and if aluminum has to be trucked in from 3 different systems to kind of keep up with demand, then it does. I'm all for Quanta creating scarcity for and resource pinches and that type of thing, and I think it's going to be an important part of the gameplay.
Well, let me ask you this.
Sure.
So we were talking about, just basically making components. What if, they gave us the ability to become a shipwright, to set up ship manufacturing, where, we talk about in-game. So say it takes 4 billion UEC to buy one of these factories, or to build one of these factories, and you've been working really hard, and you've been out mining, and at this point we've had extractors, and we're really selling just tons of ore. We've got like a
few Orions out there,
a whole E's worth of we've got like a whole E's worth of Quantanium, and we're shipping it back to sell it in UEE space, or we happen to get these smaller manufacturing plants, and we're selling all those components and making a buck there, and we have enough money saved up to where we could build a ship facility where we start manufacturing ships.
Yeah.
And gathering all the having all these supply chains that we had just talked about, and buying all these things up, and your or your factory is pumping out these ships. How awesome would that be? Where, either you're selling them back to the player base, just have a set price, or have a sliding price where, if you were making, say you had a franchise, right, with Crusader, and you were making Herculeses or something, being able to have a slight markup on them or whatever. Instead of them being 5 million, they're 6 million in, your system. But, people don't have to go all the way back to, jump back 5 systems to, go buy a Hercules or something. So, or something like that, where, these ships that you manufacture, you have your centrifuge, and, you've tweaked the stats on them and souped them up, and so they're faster than your bog standard, Hercules. Something to make them unique, where giving players the ability to manufacture, big ticket items in game, where people would want to buy them from you.
Yeah, I mean, I love that whole idea. I mean, we talked about earlier about, maybe getting the rights from the UEE to kind of claim places. What about, maybe part of that is maybe, like you said, there's some kind of where you have to kind of register with them, and to have the rights to do manufacturing, to claim manufacturing, things, and, or whatever, however it works, where, and maybe the entire thing is just building a like you said earlier, like using a Pioneer and building enough components to make your manufacturing center, what I mean, type of thing. Or, but yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. And then, in particular, I could absolutely see where like Drake or one of these places, you may be able to buy the rights to manufacture a ship, but then of course once you have those rights to manufacture the ship, I mean, you're gonna have to build all these facilities and pipelines, and all this resource acquisition is gonna be kind of required, in order to do that stuff. And build an enormous amount of subcomponents. And, what if your manufacturing plants are, it's like, hey, I could make 4 ships a day if for some reason, I could get a whole bunch more of this one thing, what I mean, type of thing. So it's a really fascinating concept, to begin kind of, as we kind of fill in the, talk about our kind of ideal star system, and eventually kind of getting down to the planet, it's the individual planet itself. But speaking to this theory crafting about crafting, and how they may handle that in the future, and how obviously you and I are really big into exploration and really big into identifying resources and that type of thing, but also acquiring those resources and then using those resources to do something with is, it's really going to be the bread and butter, hopefully.
That's right. You guys use those resources of hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, and leaving us a comment if you like what you've heard so far. Mm-hmm. And all that is really in-game stuff. And if that's, if you're into that logistical nightmare, which, we would be, make it tough, make it hard to do. Keeping up with all the resources and things you need to keep your factories rolling. That would absolutely be a fantastic, in-game scenario. At the very least, being able to manufacture components or something like that. Something other than, I like the idea of being able to create something. That is, something that is pretty dear to me as it relates to games, is being able to build, being able to create. So, in that sense, let's talk about what your dream planet would look like. Tell us a little bit about where an old miner would like to go retire.
Yeah, so very very good good question. And so we've kind of hemmed in something frontierish and something that's got some a healthy load of asteroids, obviously, in all sorts shapes and sizes. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's clusters or rings. I'm okay with that. And like I said, single sun is fine. And we talked about how there would be one planet a little close to the sun that was kind of scorched, and that would be kind of your metallics, where you kind of get a lot of metals and that type of thing. And then I talked about a planet being in the kind of the green zone, right, where that's gonna, whether or not it's a breathable atmosphere for us, I would want it to have biodiversity on that, where because it is important to be able to have some flora, some fauna, some alien, alien plant life and that type of thing would be fantastic. It doesn't necessarily, alien wildlife isn't necessarily that important to me in particular. But, having an interesting, biome. And the other thing is weather. Like, I don't want it to be necessarily violent storms, but I wouldn't mind if the weather changes, kind of quite a bit. I think that would be an important thing. But I probably would find myself, I think, whichever, I am interested, because of my interest in manufacturing. One of the things that I think is important to me on my dream planet is that it actually has lower gravity than what we're used to here on Earth. Like a gravity that would say assist in the manufacturing process. I think that's called microgravity. Is kind of the idea.
And something like Mars, where it's about 3/4 the size of Earth, where gravity is definitely lessened on it, where instead of being able to jump a foot in the air, you could jump 3 feet into the air.
Yes,
something like that.
Yeah, something that's going to take a lot less force and pressure to move kind of large components, large pieces. So if we are, and it really is, I really do struggle, because shipwright is something that would be, really, very interesting to me. I think that would be, especially for like something like, if it's mining vessels, if you're kind of almost producing the things that you're actually using, kind of in your everyday, in your everyday life or whatever. But, and of course, kind of producing those in a certain, way. So anyways, yeah. So, I've talked about, kind of, then that's one of the ideal things would be having the right kind of gravity. And then, I think having something that has seasons on it too would be fun. Like maybe where there's a warmer there's an axis and there's a warmer season and there's a cooler season. I think that would be fun. And, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like autumn and summer and snow or whatever, even if there was just a couple of different seasons where maybe the different seasons change the actual hue. Like, where like maybe it's like an azure or a bluish, but then it actually maybe tints to more like a purple. You know what I mean? Like in a different season, or there's maybe a couple of different atmospheres, at different levels on the planet. I think that would be ideal, something like that. But so yeah, I think certainly something that's, and I think you and I have chatted about this already. I would want to have something where it would have, kind of a mountainous type, kind of more up above, kind of like a vista type of thing, where, you'd have, a pretty good sized hill kind of
Cool mountain plateau.
Exactly, mountain plateau type of thing at the top of that. So you kind of have some, just kind of some natural just kind of defenses, but also just if you just kind of
something with a cool view, right?
Exactly. I mean that's an important thing to me, and being able to kind of look up in the sky and see the moon, the sun, and that type of thing is important to me as well. So I definitely would want to have, I wouldn't want to be. I think I would like to have kind of a day and night cycle. I probably wouldn't align myself on the planet where we were kind of always in light, or always in kind of a half light or a half dark type thing.
Right.
I definitely would like to have the have nighttime and daytime cycles as well.
Would you have a yellow sun, or would you want it to be one of those like suns that have those different hues, like a blue hue, or depending on the the core of the sun, I guess that's what color it kind of gives off. But would it be more of a like an Earth style sun?
I actually think it would be fun if and I don't know, I honestly don't know much about all the different suns, but something with kind of a greenish hue.
Like a greenish hue?
Yeah, would be really cool to me. Just I definitely want it to be alien, right? I don't want it to be, it certainly is. I want to be on the green zone planet in my perfect system. So and I want some biodiversity, but I don't want it to be recognizable biodiversity. I'm not looking for like a taiga, or I think or that type of thing. I definitely would like to have alien flora and fauna is just fine with me. And different colored hues, and like I said, lower gravity would be great, and then something with where you could see for a long ways, weather systems that I would like to see have weather that changes. I don't want it to, like I said, I don't want deadly storms, but I think having the weather change fairly consistently would be great. Day and night cycles would be great. And I really would like to have lots of color, lots of different hues, lots of different colors, and not crazy, you know what I mean? But where it would definitely appear alien for sure.
Yeah, something pretty unique.
Yes, absolutely unique. Where it's yes, where when you go there, you're there, and that's the only place that looks like that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So that's me. So let's so I think we need to where are you at with some of that stuff? I mean, as far as I know that we just kind of circling back, we talked about kind of the frontier. We talked about maybe having some jumps, some jump points in and out of there, but I
at least two, at least two jump points.
I don't know that we built much more framework around it. So how about it, though?
Well, I'm more of a big picture guy.
Love it.
My ideas. The bigger, the better, baby.
Absolutely.
I was a little surprised when you were saying, like 4 planets. For me, it would definitely be 10 planets, depending on, and each of the planets, having vastly different masses than the other ones. I absolutely do want to have a gas giant, our own, its own version of, say, Jupiter.
Yes.
Exactly for the reason of, being able to extract all types of different components and hydrogen. But, having that particular gas giant also have all these different gases, all these unique and probably exotic gases on it as well. I do And I know, I know this is going to sound a little samey or so-so, but hey, man, you have to have a planet with rings. You just do. It's when when you look out into that vast sky, you have to see that planet with rings around it. It's a must-have.
Yeah, its beauty is unparalleled. I don't disagree.
Yep. Um, you know, I definitely would like to have a few of the planets on the outer orbits where, they're basically ice planets, but have, be very rich in mineral resources, hard to get to, where you have to be pretty committed to want to mine them. And I definitely would like to have, went back and forth on this, whether I wanted a binary star system or just a single star. They both, I think I'm going to go with the binary, to where the system is a little bit more expanded out. You have the two stars orbiting each other in the center, where they kind of are on this weird elliptical orbit to one another, to where each of where you have these unique season changes.
Nice. I like it.
So yeah, about 10 different planets. I want the your Jupiter style gas giant that has exotic gases on it. Definitely would like to have a pretty good sized planet with the rings around it so you can see it from a distance. I'd have, that's two. Then I'd have about 3 planets on the outer elliptical, on the outer edges of the solar system. And then I would have my main planet that I would like to live on. And I wanted it to be definitely a Earth-style planet, with 4 different biomes. Most of the planet on the equator is a temperate climate, although it does have some extremes. Want it to be a little larger than Earth. Maybe Earth like about 1.4. So a little bit bigger than Earth.
Nice.
And where it can have pretty vast oceans, really deep oceans. I want the temperate zone to be a forest, have a huge foresty area on the planet,
Nice.
where it has, like gigantic, not necessarily redwoods, but something similar to redwoods, where they're like, these things would be, like huge, like 12 feet in diameter, big, big trees. And then I want definitely a mountainous area that has snow-capped mountains. Something that you get the cool views. Something with green, those green meadows that lead down into where it gets a little bit more beachy. I want some awesome looking beaches.
Nice.
Yep. With really white sands. And I want I want the greenery to just, I'd like to have a beach that was maybe about 50 yards wide, but have, just have that, have it go from that temperate climate redwoods to more of kind of plains, grasslands.
Nice.
And then the grasslands, the further you kind of go towards the edges of the continent, becomes more, unique jungle looking. Where the jungle just basically, where you have all these, wild, cool rock formations right on the edge of these beach lines, where you have the vines and stuff, wrapping around the rocks that are having, these huge stone pillars that are like at a 45-degree angle, kind of jutting out, and different, cliff styles and all these different wild rock formations, and having the jungle coming up to about, right at the beach line, and then to have like that 50 yards of beach, and that would be pretty great. And then you have the oceans, and this, it's going to be definitely more of a, a lot of diversity in the oceans. I want huge sea monster type fish and creatures.
Wow. Now that's
I want kraken in my ocean. I want I want the big giant style fish, like the big prehistoric, style fish in the ocean, and like the megalodon. Obviously these would be very alien, but just think of some of the predators being like megalodon size shark, and having orca, your own style of orca as well, and then when you go into the deep ocean, have the kraken, have the different kraken sea monsters in the deep depths. Yeah.
So a bit of a prehistoric super Earth.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Along with all the creatures as well. I definitely would like some, a whole host of different quadrupeds, and alien birds, with kind of like a over and under style wing pattern, where they have all these big wing spans, and up in the snow caps, you have the Yetis up there. so when you go up to look for mining ore and things up in the snow, you have to watch out for the Yetis up there. And where I'd kind of like to stay is kind of on the edge of that temperate forest, and I'd want it to rain a lot all the time, and kind of be on the hill, kind of overlooking down on that temperate forest in those meadows. But of course, the oceans and stuff would be like hundreds of miles away. But that's what I'm kind of looking at, is very temperate, breathable atmosphere. The higher you go in elevations, where you have really extreme weather up there. Of course, I'd like to see storms out in the jungle biomes and out closer to the ocean. I'd like it to rain a lot. I'd like it to be a pretty, wet planet, but it, also has its sunny near the equator more. Have more of the kind of the extreme weather, kind of the further you go up in the hemisphere. And on the other side of the planet, I'd like to see kind of a desert area. So something that has a bunch of different unique biomes, a lot of biodiversity, a lot of different creatures. Since we're the first to get there, so to speak, a lot of these huge prehistoric style creatures and these wild, unique, different birds. And I definitely would like my own style of wolf. Those type of things. Maybe some some bipedal dinosaur looking creatures.
Yeah,
would be
that's
pretty
sweet.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so that would be kind of the planet that I would like to live on, where it stayed a nice, like right around that green zone, stayed a nice temperate climate, never gets above 80s. But if you go closer to the equator, it gets a little warmer down there. And if you go up in the mountains, then we're talking about, minus sub temperatures. So absolutely. And then I would like to have like a couple more planets that would be in that same orbit that, the main planet's on. Zel's planet. I'd like to see a cool swamp planet like
like
Dagobah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Good biodiversity on a planet like that.
Yeah, and have it be a really scary place to go if you decide to go there. Make it really scary with the creatures that's on that planet. And then each of the planets, like Zell's planet would probably have 3 different moons that orbit it, and each of the moons would be a little bit different. They'd be minerally rich. One of the other planets that's in the orbit, so you have that Dagobah style, and then the other one would be a kind of a desert style planet, kind of like Dune.
Nice.
That's where you go and get the spice. And have that particular planet have a up and coming race spring up that's just in its infancy.
So
where
something sentient.
Yep, something sentient, something that learn to survive in a desert atmosphere. So
A tribal type thing.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
So it'd be kind of unique, and then that gets that. Should I let them be, or should I have it be where I come and visit and trade with them?
Sure.
Kind of thing. So I think that would actually be pretty great. And I would definitely on these moons, I would definitely have my mining facility set up and be shipping a lot of my ore out to the Xi'an, the Banu, and the UEE. A lot of these systems that are kind of closer. You know, when we put our systems out on the frontier, you know, that will also allow us to trade with some of these other frontier systems. So we could be doing a lot of different trading in between them. And yeah, that's how I would, you know, start amassing my fortune. And, you know, as appealing as it sounds to have the backing of the UEE, you know, to kind of keep others from coming into your place, I would definitely try to keep my system as unknown as I could, and try to do a lot of my, you know, obviously you would have your own crew of folks, and they, you know, they would be doing the shipping out. You would never have anybody, you know, shipping in. So you kind of keep your system on the QT a little bit.
Yeah,
that's the way.
You almost think. I mean, once you're established in a system, and I mean, if you become kind of a, you know, somewhat dominant industrial in that area, I mean, you might be able to eventually, you know, create some kind of a, you know, a customs like check-in at the jump gates.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I mean, you control those particular places, and then, you know, you control the way in and out, and that's you know, that you very well could you know, could absolutely pay dividends to do something like that.
Well, that's why I'd set my security forces up near those jump points, where absolutely we control the flow in and out, where you know, we amass enough cash to build an iris in front of the jump point where you can open up the door or not. So that sounds pretty wild, though.
Well, you know, listen, I think that would be the kind of thing that people would be, you know, would be looking to do in those types of situations, especially when there's, you know, potentially military conflict. You know, you know, shutting down any kind of, you know, obviously you're going to have these organically forming wormholes occasionally, but, you know, if there are kind of these known vessels that are to go between places, I mean, those are choke points that are going to be tightly controlled.
Oh, I definitely would, you know, set up the security forces around it, and, you know, become the next next big mining operation, like Shubin.
That's cool.
Where start getting a little bit more political clout, I guess, in the UEE as well. And if we start, you know, set up manufacturing in some of these places, absolutely. Make sure that you know, also that the planet that has some sentient beings on it also doesn't become corrupted, where they can develop at their own pace, I guess. So,
you know, I mean, really, to, you know, like, it's so funny because, you know, of course I love mining and that type of thing, but when it comes to manufacturing, if there was the one thing, I mean, if you could, for whatever reason, you know, this whole super collider thing comes into play with, say, the Endeavor, or there are these, you know, there are ways to kind of take existing things in the game and do research in some capacity or another, and then make them theoretically better. You know, I think the one thing I would be interested in manufacturing would be sensors, or sensor arrays, or radar arrays. You know, like, just to be able to kind of, you know, create the most sensitive detection tools for resources and that type of thing would be, ideal. I mean, it'd be so much fun to be able to kind of, put a lot of research into that particular tech. That you could, filter, do filtered sweeps for particular resources or that type of thing.
Where you kind of set up your own R&D.
Absolutely, where like you have kind of like where every terrapin in the station kind of or in the verse wants to stop by and get your sensor arrays, your radar arrays. Because they're so good at being able to, maybe they can reach out at vastly superior ranges and are just better at detecting things than other people's stuff. You have the best. What is that? What is the thing you take to the beach and look for the fallen, the goods when people.
Are you talking about the metal detectors?
Yeah, the best metal detectors in the game. You know what I mean? But ship sensor type things for that type of thing. So.
Yeah, that would actually be pretty great, and it would be cool to, to have people kind of colonize your system and make it a really, really cool place, really fun and cool place. So,
well, Tale of Two Systems, really. I mean, really kind of interesting. I mean, I definitely went for something, and this is cool. I love the fact that we have just very diverse ideas. I went for something that's maybe a little, like a, more of a green sun and a smaller system that was resource rich, but not necessarily nearly as diverse. And in something like I said that kind of lent itself towards more, kind of an alien world that doesn't have a lot of wildlife on it, type of thing. Doesn't have, but there is a lot of interesting colors and alien flora. You know what I mean? That type of thing. And then gravity that kind of is more conducive to, say, manufacturing and that type of thing. And then, being in an elevated area and having kind of a sweeping look, but certainly a smaller scale, and of course, and what you chose was, lots of great planets and kind of really, kind of the prehistoric super Earth. Is a great idea. I love that idea. And I really do like the idea of there being kind of, like a swamp or like a Dagobah style system in there as well for, so it's really kind of interesting. I think, you've got a really healthy mix of all the different kind of inert metals and all these types of things. And then also a lot more biodiversity in the area that, in the system you picked. So kind of interesting how we had just different ideas there.
Yeah, and I guess this is what it was. The way I was thinking about it is, what would your dream planet look like, right?
Yes.
If they gave you, a palette of colors and an easel and a canvas to paint on, what would you come up with? And that's that's the way I thought about it. If I was out searching, for that perfect system, what planet would I really settle on? And something like that is my ideal planet, where it's just a real great place to live, where the dual suns give you that really deep, everything has a deep hue to it. Like all the greens are really green and they pop, and the kind of the red sands of the desert really have that really, call it the red glow of the desert, really give you that, all those red hues that really pop out, and the uncorrupted oceans that are super blue, where you can see down for 100 feet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's how clear the water is. You can see that far down into the water. and just having those beaches just just have that pop to them, and that blue ocean just having that super blue hue to it. Yeah, that I mean that would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. I like the colors to have that vibrance to them that just scream. Which would give it that alien vibe to it as well, because it's just so vibrant, the colors and everything. So, and, and to be able to look up and seeing the two suns, uh, how they're the way they're in this weird elliptical orbit, how they're staggered. You can kind of barely see that one up and off from the other one, and then having three different moons that orbit it. So every time you look up, you've got the different glows of the different, because one of the moons is going to be kind of a sandy color, and the other moon is going to be sort of like the Earth style moon, where it's gray and it kind of gives you that pale glow. So having the different moons that shine down upon you in the nighttime as you're looking up at the stars, so I think that would be pretty neat.
Sounds pretty amazing to me. I mean, I think it is funny. I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise that both of us kind of settled on, definitely having some mining, definitely having some resource collection type. Obviously we're shipping, being able to kind of, whatever harvestable you're grabbing, regardless if you're manufacturing something or you're just kind of resource collecting, having some good trade routes, and working with other, systems that are maybe in a similar place, not necessarily completely tied to one, to one faction or another, establishing trade relations locally. Very important part of, really an incredibly important part of just building your business up is creating, these mutually beneficial trade, these trade packs or whatever are really important, and because not regardless how diverse your system is, it's not going to have everything.
Right.
So you're gonna have to get out there and find where the things that you don't have. You're gonna have to make deals with the people who have lots of that stuff, and definitely establish some shipping back and forth.
Yeah, like like my system probably doesn't have any quantanium in it, but it does have some of these unique and exotic gases on the gas giant. So, beyond your basic, it has some of the basic minerals on it on these different planets. But probably our biggest export would be those exotic gases, where only people with high technology can get any use out of them. So I'd be selling them to the all the different races, to the Banu and the Xi'an. So yeah, that actually sounds pretty great. So CIG, if you're listening, make sure that you build this system.
Yeah, make sure you build, Zel's planet for sure. No, and there are, I mean, if you look, like, there are some crazy super Earths, on the Arc Star map already, and,
Yeah.
it's a weird planet type that I guess, I really never had thought about before, but it makes a lot, obviously it makes a lot of sense.
Well, in reality, scientists are finding out that there's a lot of Earth-style planets out there because, you know, we're finding out is, everything has its own diversity, but um, that the universe is kind of built on a code. It's sort of like in the, why are planets round? Or, why are bubbles round? It's because it's a conservation of energy.
Right.
It's everything's kind of based. Everything is, from what we understand right now, everything is based on, a certain physics, and um, everything has its own properties, and so you're going to see, um, and since a large percentage of uh, of the universe is kind of made up of the same materials, um, you're probably going to see a lot of things that naturally are the same. So we're finding out that we're definitely getting a lot of, they're finding a lot of planets in that Goldilocks zone that are very Earth-like with water. I think it's estimated that um, that about 50 million planets right now would be probably about exactly what Earth would be in that realm. So that's actually pretty wild.
You know,
And then if
yeah.
if 1% of them had life on them, it's still a lot. So
It's incredible. I mean, with when you begin to talk about, it almost it's such an incredible number. When you're talking like 400 million this or whatever. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's we just sit here kind of on this one rock, and you try and stretch your imagination out to understand it, but we really can't. I think the only way that you can ever get perspective is like, if you watch like, some Sagan stuff or whatever, and there's like these things that travel away from Earth and take pictures of Earth from far away, or we're just an absolute pebble in a an endless vast blackness.
we're finding out so much more, even during Sagan's time, which was, when Sagan was doing his millions and millions of stars out there. But what we're finding out is that there's billion,
exactly.
This was in the 70s, right? So 40 years ago. So in the past 40 years, we're finding out that, it is a lot bigger than that. Heck, our the Milky Way galaxy is 150 light years across. 150. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's insanity. And I mean, that's just one.
Yep. And a galaxy across from it, ICU 1101, is a million light years across.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is like, mind blowing. That's how big that place is. That's huge. That's crazy. Crazy. Are you about ready to wrap it up?
I am, man. I think it's been absolute blast. I think it's
This is good. This was a good conversation. Just chatting, just sitting here chatting, man. Just talking about if you had your dream planet, what would it be? It was awesome. I had so much fun tonight.
Yeah, me too. I think it's very cool when we get to just kind of just straight theory craft and kind of unshackle the rules of whatever, is already there, and just kind of throw all that to the wind, and just kind of, yeah, just let your imagination run wild, and think about what could be, or if you were given kind of, if you were given God power, what you would do with it or whatever. So I want to say to everybody who, if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. And, Zel and I are really excited. I do want to mention one thing. We will be pre-recording next week's episode this week. So, because I'm actually going to be on vacation next week. So, but we didn't want to miss another episode. So we will be doing a pre-record. And I think we'll probably announce that in that, but I thought I would mention it now. If you happen to be listening, next week's episode is going to be a pre-recorded episode. But then, right back after it, on, normal scheduling as far as that goes, and normal scheduling picking back up after I return from vacation. So, just thank you, everybody. There have been some lovely comments, lots of people keeping up. Even tonight, a couple people said, "Hey, I'm all caught up on the episodes. Can't wait for some more." So, to all of you who do take the time and listen, comment, and really just kind of support what we're doing here. We can't thank you enough, and there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the future, and we're going to be announcing some of that stuff soon. Take it away, Zal.
Guys, I hope you have as much fun listening to this episode as much fun as it was, us doing it, because I really did. I really did have a lot of fun just talking about, all these cool and different ideas for planets. It was a lot of fun for me. And, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun too. And if you do like what you hear, you make sure that you hit that thumbs up button. You press the subscribe. Give us a little feedback down in the comments below, because V loves the interaction.
I do.
He loves listening to reading all the great feedback that we get. So we're going to see you next week on another Rock Runners Report.